Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I think we have over 100 people in the room here, the virtual room that is, and there's 4 of us in the actual room. I want to begin by thanking Michael for doing this. Michael Bamberger, who all of you know, who's a member and a renowned golf author. We get a chance to chat with him about his latest book, The Second Life of Tiger Woods, which is a terrific book. I also want to thank Jacob Smith, our executive producer, who put this together. Hopefully we could do more of these kinds of things. And Michael, if I could just start out by asking a very general question that occurred to me about 50 pages into the book. And that is, what made you write this book? Because when you started this, Tiger was kind of nowhere. He wasn't, he was like in a unusual place in his life and in his career. So what gave you the idea for this? Because he gave you a great Hollywood ending, but
Well, John, that is always a great first question for a writer. Why do you do what you do, and why did you do this one in particular? And before I even get into that, and what I'm about to say, John, is not a political statement, so I don't want our 100 listeners, but I want to say what a pleasure it is to have a president who communicates to his constituency with a level of warmth and empathy and care and precision and consistency. It's very welcome. That's not a political statement,
Thank you.
And I also want the people to know at home that this may not be the most perfect example of social distancing, but we're nearly 2 club lengths apart. So I don't know what the official distance is, but we're all familiar with 2 club lengths. But anyway, John, thank you. Jacob, thanks for setting this up. Really, really appreciate everybody tuning in. I know my wife and Christine and my son Ian are watching, and I'm sure I know a great many friends as well and other members. So thank you all for being here. And there's a long answer to your question, John. It's a short one. I'll go with the short one. The short one is, I've been covering Tiger Woods since 1995. I went up to cover as you know, but others would not. I was a reporter on the Philadelphia Inquirer before I joined Sports Illustrated in '96. And in '95, when I was still on the Inquirer, Buddy Marucci, who many would know, is a well-known amateur in Philadelphia. He got in the final of the U.S. Amateur at Newport. And I went up there on a Sunday to cover his final against Tiger Woods. And in fact, our friends, the Ferraros, watched our dog Slippers. Had it not been for that fact, Christine and the kids were out of town. I might not have been able to go, but they were able to watch Tiger. And ever since, I've had this feeling that Tiger is an unknowable person. And the reporter is always trying to get to know and understand something. I know in your political life, you've dealt with a lot of reporters, including our mutual friend, Bob Warner. But anyway, so in that period, that's going back to '95. This book covers really the last 2 years of his life, or now maybe 3 years of his life. And it's been a period of exceptional change. And as some would know, but others wouldn't, in 2017, on Memorial Day, he had a roadside arrest for DUI, not alcohol, but drug-related. And to go from that lowest of lows to try to come back as a very public person, I thought had to be actually the single biggest challenge of his life. And then, John, as you indicated at that point, I had no idea and really no expectation that he would ever win a major championship again. That all came later.
Well, it took a lot of courage to devote a lot of time to a project where you really had no idea what was going to happen at the end. I guess it might have been a good story either way, but it's an incredible comeback story.
Well, I did see some interesting things in him. Like this, what I'm about to say will be meaningless in the grand context, but people who follow Tiger will know that it's meaningful. So he had this DWI arrest, and then it followed a back surgery. And then he started coming back, and at one point he played very well in the Honda tournament in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Mm-hmm. And he played with some 21-year-old kid. And at the end of the round, someone said, "Well, what'd you think of this Sam Burns?" And Tiger said, "I'll tell you what, the Sam Burns, he played beautifully, and he just played his way into next week's tournament." And I'm standing there, I'm like, I've never heard Tiger Woods pay attention to anybody he's ever playing with. You know, it's like the famous story about Hogan when he made the when his playing partner Claude Harmon made a hole-in-one in a practice round, and Hogan made a 2, and he says something like, "I do believe it's the first time he ever made a 2 on this hole." They're like, Hogan, your playing partner just made a 1. But anyway, it's sort of along the, that story. It's not a true story, but it makes the point.
Well, I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you before we let everybody else ask questions. One of the things about Tiger that fascinates me is his relationship with his caddies, and he's had these 3 really top-notch caddies. I mean, Fluff when he started out, who ended up then I guess caddying for Jim Furyk, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he's been with Furyk for years.
Yeah, and then Steve who ended
Williams.
up caddying for Adam Scott.
Yep, exactly. Yep, and they won the Masters together.
Of course, now he has Joe LaCava, who's was Freddie Couples caddy for a long time.
Yep.
So it's kind of a 2-part question. What happens when you fall out of love, or Tiger falls out of love with you? And then, what does a guy like Joe do when he's not playing?
Yeah, I've thought about those questions a lot. Now, in Fluff's case, well, let me just say about the greatest moment of my life as a golf reporter. Tiger won the Masters in 1997. Mike Cowan, Fluff, was his caddy. There was a group of about 30 or 40 riders around Fluff when it was over, and he looks up and he sees me and he says, "Hey, Mike." And all the reporters are like, "Whoa, Fluff actually knows who you are." That was because I had caddied a little bit on tour some years earlier. So Fluff got fired. He got fired for being probably a little too much of a character. Tiger doesn't really want characters in his life. Tiger sort of needs the spotlight on himself. But Fluff was so skillful. He worked for Peter Jacobsen for years before that, and he's been out there since the mid-'70s. So for him, it was relatively seamless. And he went to work for, as you just said, John, for Jim Furyk, and they've been together ever since. So that's been a very long, successful, fruitful career. Steve Williams is a much more complicated case because he was a perfect match for Tiger, because he was every bit as intense as Tiger. They could be in the gym together. He was into some form of car racing. I don't really know I don't know what it was, but some kind of track racing. And Tiger was into it, and Tiger was the best man at Steve's wedding. And then, in my opinion, Williams, when Tiger was on, it gets to your point about LaCava and what does he do in his off weeks. Well, Tiger's been off a lot for injuries and other reasons. He doesn't play that much as it is. So in one of those periods of prolonged injury, Steve Williams agreed to caddy for Adam Scott in a U.S. Open. Well, this has always been, in my opinion, misreported or misrepresented as Tiger. Steve has given people the impression that he got fired by Tiger Woods. In my opinion, he quit Tiger Woods the second he agreed to caddy for Adam Scott in a week when Tiger Woods wasn't playing. And that led to a period of real acrimony between the two of them. In fact, and Tiger does not forget anything. Any slight at all, he uses forever. He deposits somewhere and puts it to good use later. And just this past summer, on a day when it was pouring rain at the British Open at Portrush in Northern Ireland, there was only one player on the range. Everybody else was any sense to the left. And of course, it was Tiger Woods, and Joe LaCava was right behind him, and a guy named Rob McNamara was one of his right-hand men, and a teacher named Chris Cuomo. And here comes Steve Williams, who was caddying for Jason Day that week. And he comes bounding down, and he says hi to Joe, and he says hi to Rob, and he says hi to Chris Cuomo. And Tiger just wouldn't even make eye contact with him. So there's Steve Williams wrote a book about Tiger. They could only publish in New Zealand because of a no compete clause, or no, that's not the term. No disclosure, NDA.
No disclosure.
And so there's been nothing but bad blood between the two of them. And as for Joe LaCava, he follows the first rule of caddying, which is, as we know, since we've had caddies, and I've been a caddy, maybe you've been a caddy as well, keep up and shut up. He does both really effectively. So when Tiger's not playing, he just goes home to Connecticut and does nothing, and his wife works as well. So I think they're doing okay. But I'm sure it gets very impatient. I'm sure he becomes very impatient at times.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, does Tiger have him on some kind of sour or something, or? To cover
That's the
when he's
point.
not
Like
playing?
everything retired, nobody really knows.
Nobody
Typically,
knows.
the caddies get paid, and our mutual friend Neil Oxman is an expert on this subject.
Yeah.
Typically, a caddy gets paid a weekly salary and then a percentage of the player's winnings. And that really suits the whole system because then your interests, just like having a stockbroker, you want your interests and your stockbroker's interests to be lined up. You know, if we're going to lose money, we want the stockbroker to lose money. It doesn't usually go that way. But anyway, in the caddy world, it does. You miss the cut, you make practically nothing, you get your week salary. That's true for 99% of the players. It's often been presupposed that with Tiger, there's a straight salary. But I don't really know what the answer is. I suppose that La Cava is on a bonus system like virtually all caddies are.
Okay. The other thing in the book that I was fascinated by was Tiger's kind of mini entourage, guys that go around with him. The guy who I guess is his agent, who's
Right.
from was it MGM? Or,
Yep.
And then there was another fellow who was like an old friend or something, and
Right.
he seemed to. They were inside the ropes with him all the time.
Yep.
And they're walking along with him when seems like a lot of.
Yep. Well, do you want to know more about who this entourage is?
Yeah, well, who they are, and do they go to every tournament that he plays in, or are they always with him?
You do. You always see a little group around Tiger, but it's interesting that to you it looks like a big entourage because if you compare Tiger with other superstars, let's say Allen Iverson when he was here in Philadelphia, Allen Iverson post game, he could have 20, 30, 40 people around him. You probably saw it.
I ran into him a couple times on Fridays. You know?
Yeah, he
They
loved
all
that
come
Fridays.
and take over the restaurant.
Yeah. And what was the other one up on City Line Avenue and the Marriott in Conshohocken? It was all over the place. Tiger has actually got a really small, tight circle. And he has for years, and it's one of the reasons why he's impossible to penetrate for a reporter or for anybody else. But there's Mark Steinberg, who I think you were referring to, who for years was IMG, which was the biggest of the agencies. They broke off together from IMG, and Mark's joined another company. But he's been with Tiger for 20 plus years. Then there's a fellow named Rob McNamara, who, as you indicated,
That's
is someone who's
thinking,
been an old friend. They played junior golf together. So now here he has one of his closest friends who's a practice partner, but he's also on the payroll. So that suits Tiger perfectly because Tiger's a control freak, and anyone on your payroll you basically can control, and he does that very effectively. Mark Steinberg the same. There's a PR person named Glenn Greenspan. He actually was laid off, which really surprised me early this year because Tiger very seldom makes a change of any sort. And then he's got Joe La Cava, very loyal, very quiet caddy. Quiet, but knows what to say and when to say it. You know, he really plays it all very carefully. And then a girlfriend named Erica Herman, who's been around quite a bit. So that group that I just identified, you'll see almost anywhere you see Tiger, you'll see that group and only that group. And it doesn't, and it's one of the reasons why he's been able to keep things so close to the vest for so long.
Now, do you think he's going to continue to play at the same level he did last year? It seems like this year he's got physical problems again. I mean, that's conjecture on my part, but it seemed like he was not playing as much as he had been, and that he was sort of taking more time between tournaments.
Yes. Well, before I answer your question, I has to come with a caveat. And the caveat is everything I ever predict about Tiger Woods is wrong. So pretty much whatever I say here, you probably could go to Las Vegas and take the opposite. But my expectation is I don't think you'll see Tiger play at that level that he played in 2019 again, because I think it's just too hard for him to gear up. You know, what we know only just a little bit about, let's say for an 8 o'clock tee time, he gets up at about 4 in the morning for an 8 o'clock tee time to get his body ready, to stretch, to ice for heat and wrapping and all these other things that he does. It's such an elaborate process for him. And Nick Faldo made this point to me in the book, and he's made the point many times, is that there's really only certain conditions when he can play well. And Augusta is one of the few places that really lends itself to him. Really wide fairways, rough where you're not going to break your back or your wrist, which you have at Augusta National, and then warm playing conditions where his back can loosen up. So the idea of him playing well in a British Open or PGA in May, as it's now scheduled to be played in the future, not this year, it's an odd year, it would seem unlikely. But then again, here's something with much greater wisdom than what I just said. It's from Jack Nicklaus. Never bet against Tiger Woods, because he will always prove you wrong. So take everything I said with an enormous grain of salt.
We have the ability to heal him by saying he may not get better. So now maybe
Right.
if he does get better, we'll give you credit for it. My next question was going to be, you partially answered it. With what does he do for those 3 hours in the morning to get ready? That seems like I would be too tired to play at that point.
I don't know what it is. He's a terrible insomniac. That's actually one of the few limitations in life that he's admitted to, is how poorly he sleeps. But one of the things he does a full workout. He used to run before playing. They would often have a 3:00 tee time if you were leading a tournament. For him to go for a 5-mile run at a fast clip would be nothing for him. Now his body won't allow him to do that. But he is a terrible insomniac. Last year, or maybe 2018, at the Tampa tournament, when he was coming back and starting to play well, he and I went there to cover the Sunday round. I'd been up here and I flew down for the Sunday round for the Tampa tournament when he was contending. He was on Friday morning before his tee time, in an ordinary hotel gym. They opened up the gym and they were there for him at 4:30 in the morning, and he's rolling around on one of those giant balls like we have here at the cricket club, and you have in every yoga studio. So he does a full workout and a full routine.
Wow, that's.
He is not usual in any way. But they all had their thing. Hogan, before he won the U.S. Open at Marion, would take a 2-hour bath or a long bath with Epsom salts. In fact, he was staying at the Barclay Hotel in Center City, Philadelphia, in Rittenhouse Square. So now, his thing was, coffee and nicotine to get started. So it was a completely different era.
Well, I have 2 more questions, and then we'll open it up.
Great.
One is I think something that I've always wondered. Do you think he when his life came apart, it was after his father died, that it was the absence of his father that allowed that to happen, or that he was kind of always looking to his father as kind of a central figure in his life, and suddenly that was taken away? Now, in the book, you say, quite frankly, that his mother had much more of an influence than she's given credit for.
That she did. But to address that question, I posed that exact same question to Arnold Palmer, who had also a very close, intense relationship with his own father, who was the head professional at Latrobe Country Club. And Arnold's contention was that Tiger really was lost after his father died. And for good or for ill, Tiger really needed a teacher and a leader in his life. And the father was a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. And the father's manner was not dictatorial outwardly, but on a deeper level, I think he told Tiger exactly what to do without really having to spell it out. And Arnold would tell you, were he here today, of course he's dead, is that that Tiger really was lost for a period. And he won after that. He missed the cut immediately after his father died at the U.S. Open at Winged Foot, the one that Phil blew away and that Jeff Ogilvy won. But then he won the following major, which was the British Open at Hoylake. And I think that was 2006, if memory serves me. And but he was sort of just doing it on fumes alone. And then of course he did win the U.S. Open in 2008. So there was some great golf after his father died, but it seems like things were slipping away, and that he was sort of losing his way. And then really all hell broke loose in 2009. And one of the points I'm trying to make in the book is that he won a bunch of golf. He won in 2012. He won 2013. But my take on Tiger, and why I really call it the second life of Tiger Woods, is that really there's one. If you're going to make a graph of his life, you would really say from the 2008 U.S. Open, after that, and then 2009 straight to 2017, it's basically a descent in the broad sense of his life. Even though, because he's such a great athlete, he was still able to accomplish things in golf. But his body was falling apart. I think his psyche was falling apart. And that's why it becomes all the more remarkable that he's been able to reclaim his mantle actually as a different human being in 2018 and 2019.
Well, the last question I'll ask you then is a question that probably no journalist wants to have to answer is why do you think he wouldn't be interviewed for the book?
Why wouldn't he read the book?
Yeah, well, no, why would he not, did he not want to be interviewed for the book?
Oh, why? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One reason is a friend and I wrote a nonfiction book, a fictional satire of his life called The Swinger. And I don't know what Tiger thinks about it, probably nothing, but I can't tell you how much Mark Steinberg hates this book, even though I don't think he should. But in general, Tiger, really going back to 1996, Tiger's never given any reporter that I know of, except for maybe a little quick hit here and there, and I've had that a couple of times, any one-on-one time. He's cultivated no relationships with reporters whatsoever. But probably the most significant reason, the reason that was cited to me, and this would just be one reason among any, he says he's writing his own book. I believe that he's working with the same ghostwriter who wrote Andre Agassi's book called Open, which is really the greatest sports memoir of all time, in my opinion, or certainly, I haven't read that many, but certainly one of them. So I think he wants to save his trade secrets for that. Although having said that, I don't see this guy giving up any trade secrets anytime soon, or life secrets for that matter. But I just think he made the calculated decision that it's not in his interest to share anything about his life. He's just kept things very, very close to the vest. And I think it's been selfish. I think it's been to his detriment and to the detriment of the game. But then again, that's answered with complete self-interest. Look at his life; he's won 15 major championships, And,
and
I've been around. I've been lucky enough to cover 14 of them, actually.
Wow, well, that's great. Well, why don't we open it up for everybody to ask questions now, and we could sort of see a lot of little pictures of people on the screen. And do you have some questions that have been sent in, Jacob? We could start with. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Did you watch the first two episodes of the Jordan documentary? No, I didn't.
It's tremendous. It's really, really good. He does. He has a close relationship with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is a golf addict. He got started in golf by a golfer I knew well, Davis Love, when they were both at North Carolina. Jordan loves to gamble. Tiger doesn't need to gamble. He's going to beat you no matter what anyhow. And Jordan's built a golf course in Palm Beach. I think in Palm Beach County. I'm mistaken. It's north of Palm Beach County. I don't know that Tiger's been involved in that, but they've been, I don't know about close. I was going to say close friends. I don't know who Tiger Woods' close friends are, if any. But if anybody can understand each other's life experience, I think Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods could, but even more so than Michael Jordan, I would say Kobe Bryant and Tiger Woods would understand each other, because they sort of crossed over into popular culture in different ways. But Kobe wasn't a golfer at all. Michael Jordan is famously addicted to golf, so yes, they know each other quite well.
Our next question comes from everyone's favorite golf pro, Jim Smith. In the book, there are quite a few references to his rules challenges. Has that sullied his reputation among his fellow players? Or do they look past them given his record and the opportunities he's created for others on tour?
Well, that is an extremely telling question from Jim. I called Jim just the other day with a rules question because I was confused about something. I was thinking if a guy, let's say at the 12th hole and you've played Augusta National, the 12th of Augusta National, if you hit it in the creek and you want to play again from the tee, are you allowed to put it back on the tee to play your third shot? My colleague Alan Shipnick and I were writing a fantasy 2020 Masters, and I thought I knew the answer, but I wanted to be sure, because if you get something wrong in the rules of golf, you will hear from readers quickly. It turns out you can't put it back on the tee. Yes, Jim, I think that among a very few pros, his rules issues have really made people take notice, and it certainly made me take notice. And anyone who's read the book will know that I go on length about this, because it makes me wonder about Tiger's value system at times in his life, and I hope that he's evolved out of it, because strict adherence to the rules of golf. I know this is a boring subject for a lot of people who aren't golfers, but for those people who are golfers, strict adherence to the rules of golf as the starting point for serious competitive golf. Well, it is the starting point for serious competitive golf, because it would be anarchy if you'd had anything other than strict adherence. In the case, Jim, of and for everybody else, of Tiger Woods, he's done so much to grow purses and draw attention and make golf attractive. I fear that people are willing to look past some of these rules issues that they've had, but really they shouldn't. They should really, in my opinion, all understand that strict adherence to the rules of golf is the absolute required starting point for all golf. But one of the things I do in the book, and I believe with all my heart, is that Patrick Reed had a rules debacle this year, and I think it stems directly from, I'm hesitating a little as I say that, but I do think it stems from Tiger Woods' rules issues, particularly in 2013. And I think what Patrick Reed demonstrated was a case of catch me if you can. And the underlying for golf is not catch me if you can. Right. The underlying basis of all golf, even at our level, is I'm going to do the right thing. And if I don't, you're there to make sure that I do. And it's actually an almost perfect system. So it's an insightful question, Jim. And I do think to a limited degree, there's been a limited number of players who have been very troubled by it. Outside of professional golf, I think there's a much larger number of people who have been troubled by it.
Okay, we now have many questions, so we'll get to them one by one.
The answers will become much shorter.
Next question is from Peter. Did you grapple with writing about Tiger's use of performance-enhancing drugs?
Well, I did. I have a long section about Tiger's alleged use of performance-enhancing drugs in it. I found a man named Tony Bosch. He calls himself Dr. Tony Bosch at times. He's a self-appointed doctor. If he's known to anybody who's listening now, it's probably because he was A-Rod's PEDS dealer, basically. Both his parents were doctors. He can sound like a doctor. He's not a practicing doctor. He's not a licensed doctor in the state of Florida. And there's a long section from him. He has some insights into Tiger's medical team. There's no smoking gun in the book about whether he used PEDS or not, and I'm not even going to offer an opinion here, except to say that I include Tony Bosch in the book because I feel that he is credible. And I do think Tiger Woods has demonstrated, I'm not talking about PEDS now, to use a phrase that's not appropriate for this setting, by any means necessary. And we've already talked about pushing the rules at times. The rules of golf allow you to move a loose impediment. Well, he had the temerity to ask at one point early in his career whether a 2-ton boulder was a loose impediment.
I saw that. I remember that, yeah.
A 2-ton boulder, I don't care what the rules are, is not a loose impediment. Now, to Tiger's credit, the rules officials said, yes, a loose impediment. The USG backed him up on it. My view would be that's outside the culture of sport or the culture of golf to even ask whether it's a loose impediment. It's not loose. It's not an impediment. It's a boulder. It's part of the golf course. But anyway, I'm too long an answer. I'm sorry, but yes, the short answer is I did think a lot about whether to include this whole 30-page chapter on 30-page section on Tony Bosch and PEDS, and I used it because I felt it was important.
Next question comes from Mike Kavanaugh. When we saw Tiger as assistant captain of the Ryder Cup, he seemed like a much different person than before. Can you comment?
Well, Mike, nice to hear from you, and I totally agree with that. He was a very different person as an assistant captain on the Ryder Cup team. A lot of the interesting thing happened. That was in Hazeltine in 2016. Davis Love was the captain. And one of the things that happened there was he developed a bond. He couldn't play. He was injured. And he had never had any sort of close relationship with Phil Mickelson. And Tiger, as I understand it, could see that Phil was all in on doing whatever he needed to do to help the team that week. And that's contrary to Phil's reputation. But that's what Tiger saw, and I think to Tiger's own conception. So yes, Mike, the short answer is you saw Tiger as a very different person as assistant captain, and then you saw it even more this year as the captain of the President's Cup team, which the U.S. won at Royal Melbourne in Australia this December. And I think what you'll see in the future is that team golf will become only more important to Tiger, as he'll serve as a Ryder Cup captain at least once, I imagine twice, and I think he'll be advisor to Ryder Cup teams and President's Cup teams for the rest of his life. And I think these team competitions will become part of his rehabilitation of his public image, broadly speaking. And I think it's important to remember that, he's 44 now. Let's say he lives to be to 88. He's only halfway through. In other words, there's still a lot of time for him to become an embraced love figure in the game, as Arnold, Jack, and Gary Player and others have become in adulthood.
It's a little difficult for some of the folks to hear me, so
Oh.
just repeat the question after I say it. So the next question comes from Eric, which is, how many years do you think he will still play competitive golf, and what happens after?
Interesting question. How many more years will Tiger Woods play competitive golf? Is that right, Jacob? You want me to repeat the question? How many more years will Tiger Woods play competitive golf? I don't know who Tiger Woods is if he doesn't play competitive golf. Except for the fact, as Nick Faldo says in the book, you're going to get to a point, Tiger Woods, because it's happened to everybody in every walk of life, but especially golfers, where you can't play to your standard. Having said that, among professional golfers, Hogan is one of the few people who's ever been actually had the ability to walk away from the game. If anybody else could do it, I think it would be Tiger Woods. But I could see Tiger, much like Bernhard Langer, staying really fit and really sharp well into his mid-50s and even into 60, and playing sporadically, even staying competitive on the PGA Tour. And I mean competitive, I mean contending now and again right through his late 50s. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Next question is from John Burns. You go into great detail in the book centered around rules issues involving Tiger. What is your position on the public getting involved in these affairs?
Well, John, I think, John, the question, John White and everybody else, you probably could hear it, was that what Tiger, as you described earlier, or Jim Smith was asking earlier, has had rules issues over the years. The public can get involved in rules issues in golf, less so now than they used to. It used to be that if you were watching on TV and you saw a rules infraction, you could actually call it in. I was in complete favor of that because I think the rules are designed in golf that you're going to call the penalty on yourself, but in case you, quote, forget for whatever reason it might be, Big Brother is watching. It's been very effective. People want to say, and Tiger would say this, where he once said, and it was amusing, he said, when I watch the Lakers play and Kobe travels, I don't call in, even though it does happen. Well, it's an amusing answer, but it has nothing to do with golf, because golf doesn't work on a principle of get away with it if you can. Golf works on a principle of I'm not trying to get away with anything. So I just think it's a very different principle altogether.
All right, next question is from Greg Guy. Historically, it appeared Tiger had no pro friends on the tour, but the last 5 years, it appears he's gotten closer to some. Who are they, and what does that relationship look like?
Well, Dr. Greg Geyer, interesting question. Greg Geyer asks, who are Tiger's friends on tour? It seemed for a long time he didn't have close friends on tour. Now it seems that he does. I would think that he doesn't really have close friends on tour, because I don't think Tiger can really share like the basis of friendship really is sharing among equals. He doesn't really have an equal on tour. Having said that, there's a whole group of young players, and Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth and John Rahm and even Patrick Reed in his own way, and various others are part of this group, where Rory McIlroy, I probably should have said first, is probably the best example of this group, where they grew up on Tiger Woods. They don't care about the sex scandal of 2009. By the way, neither do I. Even the rules issues that he had in 2013. What they know is that Tiger Woods created a path that they're on today. And they're not intimidated by Tiger Woods, because they never really caught Tiger Woods at the height of his powers. In fact, until Tiger won the 2019 Masters, his 15th major, Rory McIlroy had never even been at a major that Tiger Woods won. That shows you how long it had been since Tiger Woods had won a major. So, Greg, to your interesting question, I think he has the appearance of having friends, and I think he has friendly acquaintances, and I think he might very well have Justin Thomas over for ping pong and horse and backyard games of golf. But I don't know that there are friendships like we're accustomed to thinking of friendships. And by the way, as I say that, I really want to go out of my way to say, because this is true for so much of what I'm saying, I don't really know, because I can't really know. What I'm doing is reading tea leaves like everybody who covers Tiger Woods does, and giving you my best interpretation of what I know and what I see and what I've heard.
Next question is from Beth Hyde. What is the most surprising thing you know about Tiger?
The question was, what's the most surprising thing I know about Tiger? Tiger has a good sense of humor. Tiger is very smart. Tiger's got a memory like you wouldn't believe. And I would say on another level, and this is really very different, Tiger has a level of empathy that I've seen much more in recent years than I had never seen before. And a bunch of things spring to mind, but one particularly after the LA Open, I think it was in I think it was just last year in 2019, and it's at Riviera. It's a very hilly course. There were a lot of rain delays. It was wet. It was a slog. He was exhausted. And it came off the final green on Sunday, and there was a young woman there, and she was just a young woman trying to make it in golf. And Tiger had a totally appropriate relationship with her. And I saw him break out into. She was from Nepal of all places. Grew up dirt poor, and Tiger's taken interest in her life. And I could see Tiger's warmth and Tiger's care. The 2013 U.S. Open at Marion, his niece was there. She's a professional golfer as well. And I could see the warmth and the care that he had for her. So I think there are whole sides of his personality that we only see the tiniest little glimpse of from time to time. And whenever you do see it, it's a pleasure and a surprise. Rich Shepard, one of my sponsors for membership here at the Cricket Club, and it's great to hear from you, Rich. Rich, I've told this to Rich. It's a little embarrassing. He showed up in a dream of mine last year, and for some reason I had decided to become a UPS delivery person. No, U.S. postal worker, mailman, as we used to say. And I told that to Rich, and Rich's response was, well, that's great. That's going to be good for you, because then you can deliver the mail in the morning and play golf in the afternoon. I don't know why. I don't know why you showed up in my dream that night, or why we had the conversation that we did. I don't see Tiger playing the senior tour in any conventional way, because people play the senior tour mostly for money. But Tiger loves beating people, and he loves competition. And I think those they claim there's 5 senior majors. There are really 3. There's the British Open, British Senior Open, British U.S. Open, and the PGA Senior Championship. And I could see him competing in those 3 things, because they're played on hard courses against good fields for a trophy that he's going to care about. So I see him playing in those when he turns 50, but really not much else.
Next question is from Kevin Frost, related to the question about Tiger's friendships. I remember Tiger mentioning his good friend David Duval in an acceptance speech, and stories about them gambling together in Vegas. Was that a real friendship, and if so, what happened?
Well, good question. I really wouldn't know. I wouldn't know the answer. I have no reason to, from talking to David Duval just a little bit and being around David Duval over the years, I have no real reason to think that there's a genuine, deep, ongoing friendship between David Duval. But let me just say this about David Duval. One of the most underrated people on golf, when he gets on TV and talks about golf and talks about the experience of reaching number 1, and really for him what an empty experience it was, he's speaking from so deep within his own experience, and he knows what it's like to shoot 59. He knows what it's like to be the best player in the world. He knows what it's like to contend in majors and not get it done. And I find him to be an extremely interesting person, but I don't have any real insight into it, but I have no real reason to think that there's a deep, evolved relationship there.
So a few more questions coming in, and just a reminder to repeat different Rich Shepherd, which are, aside from being the St. Martin's Spring Champ, how would you rank the other 4 majors?
Was this Rick Shepherd?
This is Richard Shepherd, S-E-H.
Oh, okay. Well, we have a number of Rich and Rick Shepherds
Two-
at the
two-
club. So
two Rick
my
Shepherds,
apologies if
yeah.
I had the wrong Rich Shepherd in mind earlier because I can't see it here. And now we have another Rich Shepherd here. Yes, everyone knows there are 4 major championships in golf. In a normal year, it would be the Masters, the PGA Championship, which is now a May event, the U.S. Open in June, the British Open in July, and then, of course, the Spring Championship of St. Martin's. And then the question, what was the question? I'm sorry, was the question, what is the 5th major?
How would you rank those 4 majors?
How would I rank those 4 majors? Well, truthfully, I think there's only really 3. I think there's the U.S. Open, the British Open, and the Masters. And I think something's changed, John, even within our own years in the game, which is when we were kids, the U.S. Open for any American golfer, it was what it's what Nicklaus and Tom Watson and Arnold Palmer called the national championship, and it was heads and shoulders above all the others. And then something changed by which it was sort of the relationship between the players and the USGA changed, and it hurt to some degree the standing of the U.S. Open. Not in a significant way; it's still the major majors, but somehow, in some way, I think the Masters supplanted the U.S. Open as, if you ask the typical American pro, if you could only win one of the 4 majors, which would it be? I think they would say the Masters first. In my own mind, I think really winning, I don't know what could be cooler than winning that British Open. But having said that, if you win the Masters, you get to come back there for the rest of your life and be part of that Tuesday night dinner with the other winners. All 3 of them are great, and the PGA is great too. I mean, no one would, but for some reason, I would put those 3 at the highest level. And of those 3, I think right now, for whatever reason, you can make a case for any of the 3. But I think right now, I think probably the Masters is number 1.
If I could just eject one question in here, because I meant to ask it earlier. How did you get the reporting done on the dinner, the Champions Dinner? I thought that was fascinating stuff. And there's quite a bit about it in the book, which is really interesting. It's not something you read anyplace else.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. That's an insightful question. Without naming names of the 30 or so people who are there at the dinner of the year, I would say I have 10 to 15 of them in my phone, and good relationships with probably 20 or more of them. So they've been willing to talk to me over the years. So I've gathered a lot of string, and a few in particular. But it's not like the secret society at Yale. Skull and Bones. It's not Skull and Bones where, if you talk about it, you got to leave the room or something like that. But it is kind of secret, and I do feel very privileged that they were willing to talk about it.
Next question is from Derek Winter. Does Tiger believe he's still able to be the best player on the planet, or is he coming to terms with the physical effects of father time?
Well, the question is, Tiger. Does he still think of himself as one of the best players in the world, the best player in the world, or is he making any kind of concession to Father Time? It's funny because Father Time is one of his phrases, and he's got these pet phrases. One of them is baby steps. If he's coming back from injury, he's trying to learn a new shot, he'll say, "Oh, you've got to take baby steps." And another is Father Time, and he'll say of Father Time is undefeated, which is a cliche, but it's always funny to hear him say it. Father Time is undefeated. You've never seen anyone older than 46 win a major championship. Tiger will try to become the first person to do that. I don't think at this stage Tiger Woods has made any acknowledgments to Father Time. The other day he did a Q&A with his friend Rob McNamara, the guy that you were talking about earlier, John, and the question was, who will be the dominant player of this decade, the 2020s? And his first instinctive answer was me. And then he sort of laughed, and then he said Brooks Koepka or Rory McIlroy or Justin Thomas. Well, those are safe answers, but the truthful answer, like when you take the SAT, go with your first answer. His truthful answer was himself. If that really realistic, no, but it's neat if he thinks it is.
Question from Karen Tracy. Can you speak a little about the actual writing of the book and your process with writing and research and everything?
Well, and a nod to Karen Tracy, who's helped me with a lot of things, including the invitation that the club sent out here with a kind of a funny photograph of Tiger and me and Peyton Manning. Jake, one more time on the specifics of the question.
Can you speak a little just about the actual writing?
The process of writing the book. Well, the process of writing the book goes as follows. If anybody saw the movie Little Women, there's a scene where the author, I'm blanking, Alcott, is in her
Louisa
room
May
writing.
Alcott.
I'm sorry, help me.
Louisa May Alcott?
I think so. I'm embarrassed, and my English major at Penn is not serving me too well right here. And the mother comes with the tray of food up to her attic room where she does this writing. Well, that was kind of my life for the 4 months I was writing the book. Christine, my beloved wife, would bring me tea and crackers occasionally in my office. And what I do is, I know this will sound so romantic. You get in a room, you lock yourself in a room, and you come out when you've written 1,000 words, whether they're any good or not. Then you take a shower, go for a jog, and try to improve on the 1,000 words that you're writing. But my thing has basically been, when writing a book, try to write 1,000 words a day. If you can do that for 80 or 90 straight days, you have a book in theory, and then of course you got to try to make it readable and get it through the lawyers and fact check it and do all the rest. But 1,000 words a day is sort of what I try to do, and that's not original to me. Many other writers have done the same. But really good writers, I think, write many fewer words than that with better results. But that's been my thing, is try to write 1,000 words a day.
Another question from Beth Hyde. If he wins again, will it be his physicality or his mental concentration that carries him through?
Well, Beth Hyde asks, what makes you win a tournament in the end? Is it the physical or the mental? Or if he can win again, what will it be? And of course, the answer is both. But you can't have one without the other. You can't win a golf tournament over 72 holes without being really in psychic good health. It's too hard to win. But Beth, to answer your question, I would say at this point in his career, the mental side is much more important than the physical side, because he's not at a point in his life where he's getting better physically in terms of the actual ability to play shots or his own bodily health. What happens is, and what happens to all of us in your profession, my profession, and anybody else who's listening, as you get older, you reach a physical peak, and then you compensate for it by getting better mentally. So the way he prepares for a round of golf, the way he thinks about a round of golf, the way he allows for mistakes, he does things now in his 40s that he wouldn't have known to do in his 20s. So going forward, I think the mental side will become more important. And one thing you heard from Jack Nicklaus when he won the Masters in 1986 at age 46 was that it had been 6 years since he had won a major. Now it was 11 years since Tiger had won his previous major. And when he got himself in position to win that 1986 Masters, he said to himself, I know how to do this. Well, that's a big word, know, knowledge. They're the same words. And now here's Tiger at 44. He's going to rely on memory and experience and really a sort of athletic wisdom in ways that he couldn't when he was 20s because he didn't have it.
All right, we're going to finish up with a couple fun, small questions here. One question is, what will Tiger do if he's no longer able to play professional golf? Does he have any other passions?
The question is one that I have asked myself a lot over the years. What are Tiger Woods, to paraphrase it, what are Tiger Woods' hobbies? What are his actual other interests? And I'll be damned if I actually know the answer. There's a short answer, which every parent has, which is being the best parent that you can be. And I should have said hi to my own two children who may be watching, Ian and Alina. And I've tried, Ian and Alina. I hope I've succeeded at times. And Tiger, to be serious here, has shown in his public comments, but also in his actions, what a involved parent he is. I think that, well, he has said this, flat out said this, nothing is more important to him in this world right now than being a good father to his children. And even you can say whatever you want about Tita and Earl. I think they only had the one child, Tiger. And I think they were the best parents they could possibly be to Tiger, which isn't to say that they were perfect. But as for Tiger's other hobbies, he owns a bar and restaurant called the Tiger Woods in Jupiter. He builds golf courses, but you wouldn't really call those hobbies. He's got an enormous yacht called Privacy. He goes out on it. He likes spearfishing. But really, truthfully, I think competing and beating people is really in his life's blood. And every athlete, whether it's Seabiscuit or Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods or Jack Nicklaus, has to find a life for themselves when their playing days are over. And I think that's going to be an enormous challenge for Tiger.
Question from another member privately submitted. I have read that Tiger is very thrifty when he goes out for dinner. Is that true?
Well, the question is Tiger thrifty when he goes out for dinner? And I've observed, John, over the years that at the cricket club, the gratuity is included, or it's assigned. You don't give anything extra here. And we've all been to clubs where that's not the case. But in any event, in fact, I used to play the cricket a lot with a friend of mine that you knew, John, Fred Anton. And Fred's thing was, pay the caddy at the beginning of the round so you can see how generous you are, and then you'll get a better service. So the question whether Tiger is thrifty or not, he enjoys, not the right word, that reputation for being very frugal with tipping. I have seen it in action a little bit. The only thing that I can say from my own observation is he's not excessive. Anything other than that would be irresponsible and unnecessary for me to say.
Tiger and Peyton Manning versus Phil and Tom Brady, who wins?
Tiger and Peyton Manning. Question for the person. The question is Tiger and Peyton Manning versus Brady and Phil Mickelson. I don't know if this has been announced yet, but this is definitely in the works. I've reported that for golf.com, that they're going to play some sort of charity match probably in Florida. Tiger and Phil famously had a match in 2018, I think, 2018 Thanksgiving. It was winner takes all for $9 million. This would be just a charitable thing, as I understand it. If it was those teams, Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods. Peyton Manning is he's a member of Augusta National. He's a legit 5 handicap. Tom Brady is more like a 9 handicap. Tiger's going to beat Phil more often than not. I think it's no contest. Now, this might be under the same category as what I said earlier. Everything I say about Tiger is wrong. But in my opinion, if it was just straight up the two of them better ball, I would take Peyton and Tiger over Brady and Phil all day long, every day.
From Phil, what is your favorite Tiger trait from covering him over the years?
What is my favorite Tiger trait from covering him over the years? Well, without question, my single favorite trait about Tiger from covering him over the years is the following: absolutely no quit in him whatsoever. He has turned so many 77s into 72s and made cuts that he otherwise wouldn't have made. And in almost every other sport, there's a built-in mentality of save yourself for the fourth quarter or lose the set 6 love, knowing that you know the next set's a fresh start. Tiger does not have that mentality at all, and I think it's actually what I'm just describing. I think is the ultimate core of his greatness, is that there is no quit in him whatsoever. And the only other golfer that I really know who had that at the same level is Jack Nicklaus, who said famously of his practice sessions, even a practice ball sitting there, it's like, I'm going to hit this golf ball. I am never going to have the opportunity to hit this golf ball this way again. I'm going to give it everything I have. And I try in my own life to apply that to different things, sometimes successfully, most often not, but I think it's a very admirable trait, even though it will wear you out.
Another question from Derek Winter. Who should play Tiger Woods in the inevitable biopic that Hollywood puts out? And how should he be portrayed? As a pure protagonist or a tortured genius? What are your thoughts there?
Who would play Tiger Woods in a Tiger Woods biopic, and then how would he be portrayed? Is that the question? John, can you help me out here at all? Who would play?
I don't know who would play Tiger Woods. I don't know. No idea.
You know, I don't know. Someone skillful at golf, for starters. And there's not too many Hollywood actors who are that skillful at golf. We know that, you know, when Kevin Costner tried to play himself as a golfer in Tin Cup, he did pretty well from a guy who was athletic but didn't have a golf background. But he did not look like a tour player. I don't know the first part of who could play it, but to the question of how he would be portrayed, I think it would be a very stirring story, and the kind of thing that I've been trying to write about really for years, and in this book as well, which is this is such a powerful word. It's not really appropriate for this subject, but it is redemption. It is a second chance. It is what you do with your life if you're lucky enough to be given a second chance. And I think he's making the most of it. And I think for that reason, when there is a Tiger Woods biopic, or when there's a really thorough documentary about Tiger Woods, or other people write about him, or he writes about his own life, I do think it can be a thrilling story, because his life is life, with a lot of highs and a lot of lows and a lot of effort to come back from them.
We're right at an hour. We have our last question, which is, will signed books be available?
Will signed books be available? Well, John, I want to say this. Here's a copy for the club. I know we have so it's a signed book, and if someone wants to read it while they're, and I know we have a very efficient food operation here when we're back in business. But if people have sat down and they've ordered their appetizer course and now they're waiting for it, and they want to go over to our little library between, it'll be sitting right there.
Okay.
And yes, everybody who's listening here knows how to find me. I'd be delighted to sign a book for anybody who wants to sign a book. My usual joke, and it's true, is that once the book is signed, you can't return it to Kmart or wherever you maybe got it. But with that caveat, I'm happy to sign a book for anybody who wants a signed book.
Well, if we're out of time, and for people who have emailed questions to Jacob, Jim Smith has volunteered to answer all those emails for you, because he never gets to do enough email. So you'll hear from Jim on those questions.
Well, John, thanks
All right,
for having
thank you,
me.
Michael.
This
It was
has been
great.
a lot of fun.
It was great. A lot of fun. Thanks everybody for tuning in.